That you can jail revolutionaries, but you can't jail a revolution.
Zitkala-Ša had heard the whispers. They were going to cut her hair. Her long, thick black braids. The braids her grandmother had woven each morning as they sang their songs. In her world, only cowards and mourners wore their hair short. So she hid, beneath a bed, silent, terrified, certain that if they found her, something precious would be taken from her. They found her anyway. A few decades later, that same little girl would become one of the most famous native writers in America. She would perform violin concerts, write books, publish essays read across the country, advise politicians, fight for native citizenship, and challenge the very system that had tried to erase her. Because the people that had dragged her out from beneath that bed thought they were creating the future. What they actually created was one of their most articulate critics. This is the story of a woman who spent her entire life caught between two worlds, not fully accepted by either, yet determined to build a bridge between them. Today, we're talking about Zitkala-Ša, the red bird in the iron cage. Welcome back to the Underground Syllabus. I first learned the name Zitkala-Ša while doing something I'm sure we've all done 100 times. Googling famous people from our hometowns. In my case, that's Yankton, South Dakota. Among names I'm sure we're all familiar with, like Tom Brokaw and Adam Vinatieri, I saw a name I'd never seen before. Zitkala-Ša was born in 1876 on the Yankton Reservation in what is now South Dakota. Her English name was Gertrude Simmons, but among her own people, she was known as Zitkala-Ša, Red Bird. The daughter of a Yankton Dakota mother and a white father who disappeared before she was born. She grew up listening to stories. Stories told by elders. Stories carried through generations. Stories about who her people were, and who they had been before reservations. To young Zitkala-Ša, the reservation was her entire world. The language, the songs, the ceremonies, the Missouri River, her mother's voice, her grandmother's hands. Then came the missionaries. They arrived with promises, education, opportunity, adventure, a chance to see the world beyond the reservation. To an intelligent and curious young girl, it sounded exciting. So when the opportunity came to attend a boarding school in Indiana, she volunteered. What she didn't know was that she was stepping into one of the most aggressive assimilation projects in American history. In the late 19th century, the United States had a plan for Native children. Remove them from their communities, cut their hair, change their clothes, forbid their languages, replace their traditions, and transform them into something else. The philosophy was simple and brutal. Kill the Indian, save the man. When Zitkala-Ša arrived at the boarding school, everything felt strange. The food, the clothing, the language, the rules. Then she heard the whispers. They were going to cut her hair. Back home, short hair carried meaning. It was worn by mourners, by those who had suffered disgrace. To cut someone's hair wasn't simply a fashion choice. It was cultural violence. So she hid beneath a bed.
From my hiding place, I peered out, shuddering with fear whenever I heard footsteps nearby. Though loud voices were calling my name, I did not answer. The sounds came nearer and nearer. Women and girls entered the room. I held my breath. I remember being dragged out, though I resisted by kicking and scratching wildly. In spite of myself, I was carried downstairs and tied fast in a chair. I cried aloud, shaking my head all the while until I felt the cold blades of the scissors against my neck and heard them gnaw off one of my thick braids. Then I lost my spirit. In my anguish, I moaned for my mother, but no one came to comfort me. Not a soul reasoned quietly with me, as my own mother used to do. For now, I was only one of many little animals driven by a herder.
They found her, held her down, and cut it anyway. Years later, she would write about the experience. Not as a haircut, but as a wound. A moment when she realized that the people educating her were also trying to erase her. Yet, something unexpected happened. She excelled. She learned English, learned to write, learned to speak before audiences, mastered the very tools that were supposed to transform her. The school wanted assimilation. Instead, it was creating one of its fiercest critics. Later, she would attend the Carlisle Indian Industrial School in Pennsylvania. Carlisle was the flagship of the boarding school movement, the institution many reformers pointed to as proof that Native children could be transformed into Americans. Or at least that was the plan. By the 1890s, Zitkala-Ša had become an exceptional student, a gifted writer, a talented violinist, and a powerful speaker. But success came with a cost. She learned English. She mastered classical music. She excelled in school. She won awards. And with every success, she sometimes found herself further from the world she had come from. The education she had wanted was opening doors, but it was also creating distance. Distance from her language, distance from her community, distance from the childhood she remembered. When she returned home, some people viewed her as too educated, too influenced by white society. When she returned to white institutions, she was treated as a native first and everything else second. She belonged to both worlds and fully to neither. Rather than choose between them, she began writing about the tension itself. Her essays described the loneliness, the confusion, the pain of cultural displacement, the feeling of standing between identities. For many Americans, these were some of the first Native authored accounts they had ever encountered. Not stories written about Native people, stories written by one. And Americans listened. Many people would have stopped there. Writer, speaker, educator. That would have been enough. For Zitkala-Ša, it was only the beginning. She became an activist, an organizer, a relentless advocate for Native rights. She challenged federal policies, exposed corruption, fought for Native citizenship, and demanded that Native people have a voice in decisions affecting their own lives. Together with composer William F. Hansen, she helped create the Sundance Opera, a work that blended Dakota stories and traditions with European operatic music. Even in her art, she refused to choose between worlds. Instead, she built bridges. The same girl who had once hidden beneath the bed was now speaking before audiences, writing for national publications, and challenging the policies of the United States government. The people who had tried to reshape her identity had accidentally given her a larger platform from which to defend it. It's tempting to tell stories like this in simple terms. Heroes and villains, victory and defeat, tradition, and modernity. But Zitkala-Ša's life was more complicated than that. And that's what makes it so compelling. She loved her people, but she also embraced education. She criticized assimilation, but she used the English language masterfully. She defended native traditions, yet moved comfortably through institutions built by the very society that threatened them. She wasn't trapped between two worlds. She lived in both. And she spent her life trying to prove that Native people didn't have to abandon one identity to participate in another. That idea feels remarkably modern, because it's a question millions of people still wrestle with today. How do you move forward without losing who you are? How do you adapt without surrendering? How do you belong to more than one world? When they dragged that little Dakota girl out from beneath that bed, they probably thought they had won. After all, they cut her hair. What they couldn't cut away was everything else. Her memory, her identity, her culture, her determination. The battle they were fighting was never really about her hair. It was about whether a people could remain themselves. And on that front, they failed. The girl they tried to remake became one of the most important Native writers, activists, and intellectuals of her generation. Nearly a century after her death, we still remember her name. Not Gertrude Simmons, but the name she chose to carry. Zitkala-Ša, Red Bird. And her song is still being heard. If you're still here, thanks. As you know, I've got lots more stories like this, including one next week from a pretty amazing remote location. We'll be discussing one of the most unique communities in America. I hope you'll join me back here for it. Until then, I'm David. Thanks for watching the Underground Syllabus.